My wife is a con artist. I thought I knew everything about my wife, Sarah, until the FBI showed up at my door asking about the $2 million she'd stolen from her own company. That's when I realized the woman I'd been married to for 3 years was not who I thought she was at all. But let me start from the beginning, because this story, well, it's going to blow your mind. Chapter 1, The Meeting. My name is David Chen, and I am a high school math teacher in Portland, Oregon. Not exactly the most exciting job in the world, but I loved working with kids and helping them figure out that numbers could actually be fun. I was 32, lived in a small apartment downtown, and honestly, I was pretty lonely. That was when I met Sarah Martinez at a coffee shop on 3rd Street. It was a rainy Tuesday morning in October, and I was grading papers when this gorgeous woman with dark hair and the most beautiful brown eyes I had ever seen accidentally bumped into my table. Coffee went everywhere, all over my students' algebra tests. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she said, frantically grabbing napkins. "I'm such a klutz. Please let me pay for your dry cleaning or... Wait, are those important papers?" I looked at the coffee-stained tests and started laughing. "Actually, you might have done my students a favor. Some of these answers were pretty rough." She smiled, and I swear the whole room lit up. "I am Sarah," she said, extending her hand. "David," I replied, shaking it. Her skin was soft, and she had this confident way of looking right into my eyes that made my heart skip. "What do you do, David the math teacher?" she asked, sitting down across from me, glancing apologetically at the stained test sheets. "I teach at Lincoln High, not very glamorous, but I love it. What about you?" "I work in finance," she said, waving her hand dismissively. "Super boring number stuff. Though I guess you like numbers too, right?" We talked for 2 hours. She was funny, smart, and seemed genuinely interested in everything I had to say. She told me she had moved to Portland from San Francisco for work, did not know many people yet, and was hoping to explore the city more. "Maybe you could show me around sometime?" she asked as we were getting ready to leave. I could not believe my luck. I would love to. We exchanged numbers, and I walked home feeling like I was floating on air. A woman like that, interested in a guy like me, it felt too good to be true. Chapter 2, Falling in Love. Our first real date was that Saturday. I took her to Powell's Books, this massive bookstore that is basically a Portland landmark. She seemed fascinated by everything, asking questions about the city's history, the neighborhoods, the best places to eat. "You really love it here, don't you?" she said, as we browsed through the travel section. "Born and raised," I told her. "My parents immigrated here from Taiwan when I was 5. Portland H has been good to our family." She picked up a book about Oregon and flipped through it. It must be nice having roots somewhere. "I have moved around so much I never really feel settled anywhere." There was something sad in her voice when she said that, and I wanted to wrap her in my arms and tell her she could make roots here with me. But it was way too early for that kind of talk. Over the next few months, we were inseparable. Sarah was everything I had ever wanted in a partner. She was adventurous and supportive of my teaching, even coming to the school play my students put on. And she was affectionate in a way that made me feel like the luckiest guy alive. She told me about her job at a financial consulting firm downtown, and how she traveled sometimes for work, which explained why she'd disappear for a few days here and there. But she always came back with stories and little gifts from whatever city she had visited. "The work pays well," she would say, "but it is not my passion, you know? Sometimes I think about what it would be like to do something more meaningful, like what you do." I loved that she saw my teaching as meaningful. Most people just saw it as an underpaid, thankless job. By Christmas, I was head over heels. We spent the holidays together, and she cooked this incredible Mexican feast for us on Christmas Eve. She told me about growing up in Texas and about feeling caught between two cultures sometimes. By the following summer, I knew I wanted to marry her. I had never been so sure of anything in my life. Sarah made me feel confident, loved, like I could be the man I had always wanted to be. I planned this elaborate proposal at Multnomah Falls, this gorgeous waterfall about 30 minutes outside Portland. We had hiked there on our 3rd date, and she had said it was the most beautiful place she had ever seen. I got down on one knee right at the viewpoint, with the falls crashing behind us and all these tourists taking pictures. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely get the ring box open. "Sarah Martinez," I said, my voice cracking. "You have made me happier than I ever thought possible. Will you marry me?" She started crying immediately, and for a second I panicked, thinking they were the wrong kind of tears. But then she was nodding and laughing and saying yes over and over again. The ring wasn't anything fancy, as I had saved up for months on a teacher's salary to buy it. But when I slipped it onto her finger, she looked at it like it was the most precious thing in the world. "It's perfect," she whispered. "You're perfect." Yeah, but she could not stop crying. "Hey, what's wrong?" I asked, stroking her hair. "Nothing's wrong," she said. I have never been this happy before, and it scares me a little." "Why would happiness scare you?" I was surprised. She was quiet for a long time. "Because good things never last for me, David. I'm not used to people staying." I held her tighter. "I am not going anywhere, I promise." Chapter 3, Married Life. We got married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the Portland Art Museum. Sarah didn't have much family. She said her parents had died in a car accident when she was in college, and she'd lost touch with most of her extended relatives. It made me sad that she felt so alone in the world, but it also made me more determined to give her the family and stability she'd been missing. My parents loved her immediately, and my mom kept saying how Sarah reminded her of herself when she was young, strong, independent, but with a vulnerable side she only showed to the people she trusted. The first year of marriage was like a dream. Sarah quit her traveling job and found something local, or at least that's what she told me. She said she wanted to be home more, to build a life with me in Portland. We bought a little house in the Hawthorne district with a garden where Sarah planted tomatoes and herbs. She was surprisingly good at it, saying her grandmother had taught her when she was little. On weekends, we had work in the yard together, and I would watch her humming while she tended to her plants, dirt under her fingernails. Completely content. Those moments felt so real, so pure. Looking back now, I wonder if they were the only times she was truly herself with me. By our second year of marriage, I started noticing little things that didn't quite add up. Nothing major, just small inconsistencies that nagged at me, like how she had sometimes slip and call San Francisco home, even though she had told me she'd grown up in Texas. Or how she knew way too much about wine for someone who claimed to have grown up working class. Or how she'd get these expensive packages delivered sometimes and brush off my questions about what they were. "Just work stuff," she'd say. "Boring financial documents." Sarah always had good explanations for everything. There were other things too. Sometimes her phone would ring late at night, and she would step outside to take the call, saying it was work. Once, I saw an email notification pop up on her laptop screen from someone named Marcus, with the subject line, "Phoenix situation resolved." When I asked about it, she said Marcus was a colleague helping her with a difficult client in Arizona. "You seem stressed about work lately," I said one evening as we were making dinner together. "Maybe you should look for something else? Something that makes you happier?" She paused in her chopping of onions, her shoulders tensing. "It's not that simple, David. I have obligations. People depend on me." "What kind of obligations?" She turned to face me, and for just a moment I saw something in her eyes that looked almost like fear. But then she smiled and kissed me on the cheek. "Just boring work stuff. Don't worry about it, okay? I can handle it." But I was starting to worry. Not because I suspected anything terrible, I just wanted my wife to be happy, and she seemed to be carrying some kind of burden. Chapter 4, The Unraveling Begins. Everything changed on a Thursday morning in March during our third year of marriage. I was at school, teaching my second period algebra class, when my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Emergency at work. Have to go to Chicago for a few days. Love you." It wasn't unusual. She still traveled occasionally for her consulting work. But something felt different this time. The text seemed rushed, almost panicked. And she usually called to tell me about work trips, not just sent a quick text. I tried calling her during my lunch break, but her phone went straight to voicemail. That evening, I was home alone, grading papers and missing her, when the doorbell rang. I opened it to find 2 people in dark suits, a man and a woman, both looking very official and very serious. "Mr. Chen," the woman said, showing me a badge. "I'm Agent Lisa Rodriguez, FBI. This is my partner, Agent Mike Thompson. We need to ask you some questions about your wife." My heart stopped. What about Sarah? Is she okay? Has something happened to her? "Can we come in, sir?" I let them into our living room, my hands shaking as I offered them coffee or water. They declined and sat on our couch, the same couch where Sarah and I watched movies every weekend, where she'd curl up against me and laugh at my terrible jokes. "Mr. Chen," Agent Rodriguez said gently, "what we're about to tell you may come as a shock. Your wife, Sarah Martinez, is wanted in connection with embezzlement and fraud charges totaling over $2 million. The room started spinning. "That is impossible. There's been some mistake. My wife works for a consulting firm." "She does financial analysis, nothing illegal." Agent Thompson leaned forward. "Sir, there is no consulting firm. Sarah Martinez, and we believe that may not even be her real name, has been running an elaborate con game for the past several years. She's been posing as a financial advisor and stealing money from her clients." I felt like I was going to throw up. No, you're wrong. Sarah would never. She's not capable of." "We understand this is difficult," Agent Rodriguez said, "but we need to ask you some questions. How much do you know about your wife's work? Her travel? Her finances?" I sat there staring at them, trying to make sense of what they were telling me. My Sarah, the woman who cried during commercials about rescue animals, who brought soup to my sick students, who held me when I had nightmares about my father's death, was a criminal? "I don't understand," I whispered. "We have been married for 3 years. We live together, and we are planning to start a family. You are telling me my entire marriage is based on a lie?" The agents exchanged a look. "Mr. Chen, when was the last time you spoke to your wife?" "This morning. She texted me about a work trip to Chicago." "There's no work trip," Agent Thompson said. "Sarah Martinez disappeared 2 days ago when we got close to arresting her. We believe she's fled the country." Chapter 5. The Investigation. The next few hours were a blur of questions, searches, and revelations that shattered everything I thought I knew about my life. The FBI went through our house with a fine-tooth comb. They found a hidden safe in our bedroom closet that I had never known existed. Inside were multiple passports with Sarah's picture, but different names, bundles of cash, and documents I could not make sense of. "Elena Vasquez, Maria Santos, Isabella Rodriguez," Agent Rodriguez read from the passports. "Your wife has been using multiple identities for years. They showed me bank statements for accounts I had never heard of, credit reports under names I didn't recognize. And most devastating of all, evidence that she'd been married before, twice. Both previous husbands were also targets," Agent Thompson explained. "She married them, gained their trust, gained access to their finances or social circles, and then disappeared when she got what she needed." I felt like I was drowning. So I was just, what? Another mark? Another target? "We don't think so," Agent Rodriguez said, which surprised me. "The pattern with you is different. She stayed longer, seemed more, invested, and she never tried to access your finances or asked you for money, which was her usual method." "Then why did she marry me?" "We are not sure. It's possible that she genuinely cared for you, even while she was running cons on the side. That was supposed to be comforting, but it just made everything more confusing. How could someone genuinely care for me while living an entire double life? They asked me to go through our shared computer, looking for any clues about where she might have gone. That's when I found files I had never seen before. Detailed profiles of wealthy individuals, financial records, what looked like elaborate plans for various cons, and then I found something that made my blood run cold, a file labeled David Chen, Target Assessment. Inside was everything about me, my salary, my family's financial situation, my social connections, my daily routines. There were even notes about my personality. Trusting, naive about finances, strong family connections could be useful, unlikely to become suspicious. At the very bottom, in Sarah's handwriting, was a note dated just 2 months after we met. Not suitable for financial con. Insufficient assets. Potential long-term cover marriage. Further assessment needed. I showed the agents, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the papers. "I'm sorry," Agent Rodriguez said softly. "I know this is painful. So I was a target," I said. "Just not the kind she usually went for. It appears that way initially, yes. But something changed. These notes stop after about 6 months, and there's no evidence she ever tried to use you financially. In fact, our investigation shows she was actually supporting your household with money from her other activities." Great. So I had been unknowingly living off stolen money while my wife played house with me between cons. Chapter 6. Memories Re-examined. That night, alone in the house we had shared, I could not stop replaying every moment of our relationship. Every conversation, every kiss, every time she had told me she loved me, was any of it real? I remembered our third date, when she had asked so many questions about my family, my background, my finances. At the time, I had thought she was just interested in getting to know me. Now I realized she had been conducting an assessment. I thought about all those work trips, all those late-night phone calls, all those expensive packages. She had not been building a consulting business. She had been running cons on innocent people while coming home to play the loving wife with me. But then I remembered other things too. The way she would cry during sad movies. How she would stay up all night when I had the flu. The way she would light up when she talked about our future together. The kids we'd have. The trips we'd take. The life we'd build. The morning after she got her period one month, I had found her sitting in the garden, crying quietly among her tomato plants. When I asked what was wrong, she had said she was disappointed we weren't pregnant yet. "I want to give you babies, David," she had whispered. "I want to give you everything you deserve." Could someone fake that level of emotion? That level of intimacy? I didn't know what to believe anymore. Chapter 7. The Search. The FBI investigation continued for weeks. They traced Sarah's activities across multiple states and discovered an elaborate network of identities and schemes. She had stolen money from wealthy widows, convinced small business owners to invest in fake companies, and even run a romance scam on several men she had met online. But the more they uncovered, the more confused I became about where I fit into her life. "She kept your marriage completely separate from her criminal activities," Agent Rodriguez told me during one of our meetings. "Most cons like this, the spouse is either complicit or used in some way. But with you, it's like she was living two completely different lives." They had traced her movements to Montreal, then Toronto, then the trail went cold. She had probably fled to a non-extradition country, they said. I might never see her again. Part of me was relieved, but a bigger part of me was heartbroken and confused. I needed answers. I needed to understand how the woman I had loved so completely could have deceived me so thoroughly. Against the FBI's advice, I hired a private investigator named Janet Walsh. She was a former cop who specialized in tracking down people who didn't want to be found. "I have to warn you," she said during our first meeting. "You might not like what I find. Sometimes the truth is more painful than the lie." "I need to know," I told her. "I need to understand who she really was." Chapter 8. The Trail. Janet was good at her job. Within 2 weeks, she had traced Sarah to Costa Rica, where she was apparently living under yet another identity. But Janet found something else too. Information about Sarah's real background that the FBI had missed. "Her name actually is Sarah Martinez," Janet told me over coffee at the same shop where I had first met my wife. "She grew up in El Paso, not Texas like she told you, but close. Her parents really did die in a car accident when she was in college. But here's the thing. They were heavily in debt when they died. Medical bills from her mother's cancer treatment had wiped out their savings." She slid a folder across the table to me. Sarah dropped out of school to pay for their funeral. She worked 3 jobs but still could not make ends meet. She was about to lose her family's house when she met a man named Carlos Mendez. Who was he? A con artist, charming, sophisticated, probably a lot like your wife became. He taught her the business, and she was apparently a natural, but according to my sources, she was never comfortable with it. She tried to go straight several times, got legitimate jobs, but she always got pulled back in. Janet pulled out a photograph, Sarah but younger, maybe 25, sitting at a cafe with a handsome man I didn't recognize. "That's Carlos. He died in a car accident 4 years ago, around the time Sarah would have met you. My sources say she was trying to get out of the life then. She'd saved up enough money to disappear, start over clean. But she did not. No, she met you instead." Chapter 9. The Letters. 2 months after Sarah disappeared, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a letter in Sarah's handwriting and a cashier's check for $50,000. The letter said, "David, I know you hate me. I know you probably wish you had never met me. I don't blame you. But I need you to know that everything I felt for you was real. I came to Portland to run a con on a businessman there, someone Carlos had identified as a target. But the deal fell through, and I was stuck there with nowhere to go and no money coming in. I was outside that coffee shop trying to figure out my next move when I saw you inside with those math sheets. You were supposed to be a quick assessment, maybe a temporary mark until I could figure something else out. But then we started talking, and you were so kind, so genuine. You looked at me like I was precious instead of like I was prey. I had never experienced anything like that before. I told myself I was just playing a part. But I fell in love with you, David. Really, truly in love. For 3 years, I tried to be the woman you deserved, but I could not completely escape my past. I had obligations, debts to pay, people who wouldn't let me just walk away. The money I'm sending you is clean. It's from a legitimate investment I made years ago. It's not much, but I want you to have it. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need you to know that being married to you were the happiest years of my life. You made me believe I could be good and be worthy of love. Even if it was all built on lies, the love I felt for you was the most real thing I've ever experienced. Don't try to find me. I'm going somewhere I can't hurt anyone else, including you. I'm sorry for everything. Forever yours, Sarah. I read the letter at least 20 times, crying so hard I could barely see the words. Part of me wanted to tear it up, to dismiss it as just another manipulation. But something about the way it was written, the specific details she included, the rawness of the emotion, it felt true. Chapter 10, Grief and Anger. The next few months were the hardest of my life. I took a leave of absence from teaching because I could not concentrate on anything. I could not sleep in our bed, could not look at the garden she had planted, could not walk through the house without seeing reminders of the life we had built together. I was angry. At Sarah, at myself, at the FBI for not catching her sooner, at the universe for letting me fall in love with someone who couldn't love me back honestly. But underneath the anger was grief so deep I felt like it might swallow me whole. Because here's the thing, even knowing everything I knew, I still missed her. I missed her laugh, her terrible cooking, the way she would snatch my sweaters and wear them around the house. I missed having someone to talk to at the end of the day, someone who knew how I liked my coffee and would bring it to me in bed on Sunday mornings. Most of all, I missed believing that someone loved me completely and unconditionally. Even if it had been a lie, it had felt real to me. Chapter 11, Searching for Answers. 6 months after Sarah disappeared, I made a decision that everyone thought was crazy. I was going to Costa Rica to find her. David, this is a terrible idea, Janet warned me. She is dangerous. A professional liar and a manipulator. Even if you find her, what makes you think she will tell you the truth? Because I need to hear it from her, I said. I need to look her in the eye and ask her if any of it was real. Janet sighed. If you're determined to do this, at least let me help. I have contacts down there. My parents begged me not to go. My principal at school thought I was having a breakdown. But I could not move on with my life without answers. I used Sarah's $50,000 to fund the trip, which felt appropriate somehow. If she wanted me to start over, this was how I was choosing to do it. Janet's contacts traced Sarah to a small town on the Pacific coast called Manuel Antonio. She was apparently living quietly, working at a local wildlife rescue center under the name Elena Vasquez. When I saw that detail, I almost broke down crying. Sarah had always loved animals. She would volunteer at the Portland Animal Shelter on weekends and talked about fostering dogs later. If she was working with animals, maybe some part of the woman I had fallen in love with was real. Chapter 12, The Confrontation. I found her on a Tuesday morning feeding injured sloths at the rescue center. She looked different. Her hair was shorter and darker, she had lost weight, and she wasn't wearing makeup. But I would have recognized her anywhere. She was talking softly to a baby sloth in Spanish, completely absorbed in what she was doing. For a moment, I just watched her, remembering why I had fallen in love with her in the first place. Then she looked up and saw me. The feeding bowl fell from her hands, scattering fruits across the ground. Her face went completely white. "David," she whispered. "Hello, Sarah. Or should I call you Elena now?" She looked around frantically, like she was thinking about running, but then her shoulders slumped in defeat. "How did you find me?" "I hired someone. It wasn't that hard, actually. You didn't try very hard to disappear." She was quiet for a long moment. "I guess part of me hoped you would come. We need to talk." She nodded, finishing quickly with the animals and leading me to a small office behind the main building. We sat across from each other at a battered wooden desk, and for the first time in months, I was looking into the eyes of the woman I had married. "Why?" I asked. "That's all I need to know. Why me? Why the marriage? Why did you stay so long if I wasn't useful to you? Sarah, Elena, whoever she was, started crying immediately. Because I love you, she said. I know you don't believe that, and I don't blame you, but I love you more than I've ever loved anything in my life. Then why didn't you tell me the truth? Because I was terrified you would leave me. I was ashamed, and by the time I realized what I had become, I was in too deep to get out. She told me everything then. About Carlos, about the cons, about the debts and obligations that had kept her trapped in that life even after she wanted out. About how meeting me had changed everything for her. I tried to quit so many times, she said, but Carlos had people who wouldn't let me walk away. After he died, I thought I could finally be free. But there were still debts to pay, still people looking for money I owed them. So you married me as a cover? Initially, yes. But David, I swear to you, within a month of knowing you, I was completely, desperately in love. Everything we had together, everything I felt for you, that was real. The only real thing in my life. But you kept lying to me. I kept hoping I could find a way out. I kept thinking if I could just finish one more job, pay off one more debt, I could tell you everything and we could start fresh. But it never ended. There was always something else, always another person I owed. We talked for hours. Sarah told me about her childhood, her parents' death, how Carlos had found her when she was desperate and vulnerable and had essentially groomed her into crime. She told me about the guilt she carried, the nights she would lie awake next to me hating herself for deceiving me. Every time you told me you loved me, it felt like a knife in my chest, she said. Because I knew I didn't deserve it. I knew that if you knew who I really was, you would run as far away from me as possible. Maybe I would have in the beginning, I admitted. But Sarah, we were married for 3 years. If you had told me the truth after a year or even 2 years, we could have worked through it together. Could we have? Really? You are a high school teacher, David. You believe in right and wrong, in following the rules, in being honest. How could you have stayed with someone like me? I thought about that. She wasn't wrong. The idea of being married to a criminal was horrifying to me. But the idea of losing her was worse. I don't know, I said honestly, but I would have tried. I loved you enough to try, she cried harder. I wanted to tell you so many times, especially after we got engaged. Do you remember that night after you proposed when I was crying? I nodded. I was crying because I knew I didn't deserve you, and I knew that someday you would find out the truth and hate me for it. But I was too selfish to give you up. What about now? I asked. Are you still? No, I'm completely out. I used the last of my savings to pay off my remaining debts, and I have been clean for 8 months now. I work at the rescue center, live in a tiny apartment, and I barely have enough money for food. But I'm free. She looked at me hopefully. I know it's probably too late, and I know I have no right to ask, but is there any chance? Could you ever forgive me? I stayed in Costa Rica for a week, and we spent every evening together talking. Really talking, maybe for the first time in our entire relationship. She told me truthful stories about her childhood, about her parents, about the jobs she had loved before she got caught up in the con game. I told her about how devastated I had been when she left, about the months of depression and anger and confusion. I know I hurt you, she said one evening as we walked along the beach. I know I broke something between us that might never be fixed. But David, I need you to know that being your wife, even under false pretenses, taught me what it felt like to be truly happy. You made me want to be a better person. And are you a better person now? I'm trying to be. Every day I'm trying to be. I looked at her, really looked at her. The expensive clothes and perfect makeup were gone. Her hands were rough from working with the animals. She looked tired, older, but also more at peace than I had ever seen her. The woman I fell in love with, I said slowly, the one who cried at movies and planted tomatoes in our garden, was that real? That was the most real I have ever been, she said without hesitation. That was who I wanted to be, who I was trying to become. That was the person you made me believe I could be. And the criminal stuff? The cons? I asked with uncertainty. That was survival mode. That was the person Carlos created, the person I had to be to stay alive in that world. But it was never who I wanted to be. I believed her. God help me, I believed her. Chapter 14, Forgiveness. On my last night in Costa Rica, Sarah and I sat on her tiny balcony overlooking the ocean. She had cooked dinner, Simple rice and beans, nothing like the elaborate meals she used to make in Portland, but it tasted like home somehow. "What happens now?" she asked. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I still love you. I hate that I do, but I can't just turn it off. I love you too. I know you probably don't believe that." "I do believe it," I interrupted. "That's what makes this so hard. If you were just a heartless criminal who had used me, I could hate you and move on. But I think you were telling me the truth. I think you really did love me, and that makes everything more complicated." We sat in silence for a while, listening to the waves crash against the shore. "I can't go back to the way things were," I said finally. "Too much has happened. Too much trust has been broken." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know. But maybe we could start over. Really start over, with complete honesty this time." She looked up at me, hope flickering in her eyes. "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe I could move down here for a while. Maybe we could date again, get to know each other again, but with no lies this time. No secrets, no hidden identities, no criminal activity, just Sarah and David, figuring out if we can build something real together." "You would do that? You would give up your life in Portland?" "What life? I haven't been able to function since you left. I can teach maths anywhere, and honestly, I could use a change of scenery." She was crying so hard she could barely speak. "David, I don't deserve another chance." "Maybe not," I said. "But I think we both deserve to find out who we could be together if we started with the truth this time." I moved to Costa Rica 3 months later, after settling my affairs in Portland. I sold our house, as I could not bear to live there anymore anyway, and used the money to start fresh. But what I didn't know was that the FBI had been watching me, hoping I would lead them straight to Sarah. And I had been in Costa Rica for exactly 1 week when it happened. I was walking back to Sarah's apartment after my first day at the international school where I had gotten a job teaching mathematics. Sarah was waiting for me with dinner, and she had lit candles and picked flowers from the garden behind her building. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely happy. That was when the door burst open. "FBI, nobody move." Agents swarmed the tiny apartment, Agent Rodriguez and at least 4 others, all with weapons drawn. Sarah's face went completely white, but she didn't run. She just stood there, her hands raised, looking defeated. "Sarah Martinez, you're under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy," Agent Rodriguez said, pulling out handcuffs. "Wait!" I stepped between them and Sarah. "You followed me here? You used me to find her?" Agent Rodriguez looked genuinely sorry. "Mr. Chen, I'm afraid we had to. She's wanted for multiple federal crimes, and we figured you were not able to let her go." I turned to look at Sarah, who was crying silently. "I'm sorry, David. I knew this would happen eventually. I just hoped we would have more time." As they led her away in handcuffs, she looked back at me one more time. "I love you," she mouthed. I stood there in that empty apartment, surrounded by the ruins of our dinner, feeling like my heart had been ripped out of my chest all over again. Chapter 15, The Deal. I flew back to Portland the next day and immediately contacted a lawyer for Sarah. What I learned changed everything. The FBI offered Sarah a deal: become an informant and help them take down the rest of Carlos's network, or face 25 years in federal prison. "She doesn't have much choice," her lawyer, Michelle Park, explained to me. "But David, you need to understand. If she takes this deal, she'll be putting herself in serious danger. These people don't forgive betrayal." Sarah chose to cooperate. Over the next 6 months, while she was held in protective custody, Sarah gave the FBI everything. Names, locations, bank accounts, methods. She exposed an entire criminal network that had been operating for over a decade. I visited her every week at the federal facility where they were keeping her. She looked smaller somehow, wearing an orange jumpsuit instead of the simple dresses she had worn in Costa Rica. But she also looked determined. "I want to do this," she told me during one visit. "These people destroyed my life, and they're still out there destroying other people's lives. If I can stop them, maybe some good will come from all of these. But what about us? What about our future?" She reached across the table and took my hand. "David, you should move on. Find someone who won't bring danger into your life." "Stop it," I said firmly. "We've been through this. I'm not going anywhere. Even if it takes years, even if it's dangerous. Especially then." The FBI's operation was massive. Using Sarah's information, they arrested 12 members of Carlos's network in coordinated raids across 5 states. Millions of dollars in stolen assets were recovered, and many victims finally got justice. But they missed one. Victor Morales, Carlos's brother and the most dangerous member of the network, had disappeared before the raids. The FBI believed he'd fled the country, but they could not be sure. After 18 months as an informant, Sarah was finally released. Her cooperation had earned her a reduced sentence, probation instead of prison time, plus community service and restitution payments. I picked her up from the federal facility on a cold February morning. She looked different, older, more serious, but also somehow stronger. "It's over," she said as we drove away. "It's finally over. I wanted to believe that. God, I wanted to believe that." Chapter 16. Trying to Rebuild. We moved to a small apartment in Northeast Portland and tried to build a normal life. Sarah found work at an animal rescue center, and they were surprisingly understanding about her background. I went back to teaching at Lincoln High. For 6 months, everything was perfect. We were like newlyweds again, grateful for every moment together. Sarah was different now, more open, more vulnerable. The walls she had built around herself during her criminal years were finally coming down. We talked about getting married again, a real wedding this time with our families present. Sarah had even started talking to a therapist about her trauma, about Carlos, about learning to trust herself and others. "I feel like I'm finally becoming the person I was meant to be," she told me one evening as we cooked dinner together. Before Carlos, before the cons, before all the lies, just me. I was so happy I could barely contain it. "I love the real you," I told her. "I always have." The following morning, our world exploded again. I was at school, teaching my 4th period class, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "If you want to see your wife alive again, come to the warehouse at 2247 Industrial Way. Come alone. You have 1 hour." My blood turned to ice. I excused myself from class and immediately tried calling Sarah. No answer. Then I called the animal shelter where she worked. "Sarah," her supervisor said. "She left about an hour ago, said there was a family emergency." I knew with absolute certainty that Victor Morales had found us. I should have called the FBI. I should have called the police. But the text had been clear: come alone, or Sarah would die. And after everything we had been through, after all the time she had protected me, I could not risk her life by bringing the authorities. I drove to the warehouse district with my hands shaking so badly I could barely steer. The warehouse was exactly what I had expected. Dark, empty, filled with shadows and the smell of rust and decay. I found them in the center of the main floor, where Victor had Sarah tied to a chair. Even from 50 feet away, I could see that she had been beaten. Her lip was split and her left eye was swelling shut. But worse, there was blood on her shirt, spreading from what looked like a stab wound on her left side. Sarah looked scared and pale, and I felt my life gradually slipping away from me again. She was conscious, and when she saw me, she shook her head frantically despite her obvious pain. "Don't come any closer!" she screamed, her voice weaker than usual. "David, get out of here!" "Call the FBI!" Victor laughed, holding a bloody knife in one hand and a gun in the other. How touching. The little con artist actually cares about someone other than herself. Too bad she won't be around much longer to show it. I walked closer with my hands raised, my heart breaking at the sight of Sarah's blood. "Let her go. Your problem is with me, not her." "Actually, my problem is with both of you," Victor said, switching the knife for the gun. "She cost me everything. My brother, my business, my freedom, and you. You are the reason she found the courage to betray us all." Sarah was crying now, each breath seeming to cause her pain. "Victor, please. David has nothing to do with this. He's innocent. Let him go and you can do whatever you want to me." "How noble," Victor sneered. "But I don't think so. I'm going to kill you both. But first, I want him to watch you bleed out. I want him to know that loving you was the biggest mistake of his life." He pointed the gun at Sarah's head. "No!" I screamed and rushed forward without having any thoughts or plans. I just want to protect the only woman I had ever loved. Chapter 17. The Fight. What happened next felt like it took forever, but it probably lasted less than 10 seconds. Victor turned the gun on me as I ran toward them. I saw Sarah's eyes go wide with terror, not for herself, but for me. And in that moment, I understood that everything she had said about loving me was true. I could finally see it in her face. in the way she looked at me like I was her entire world. Despite her injury, despite being tied to the chair, Sarah threw herself forward, trying to outrun me, thereby knock Victor off balance. The gun went off as she collided with him, and I heard her cry out in pain. But she had succeeded in throwing off Victor's aim. The bullet went wide, and Victor stumbled backward. I tackled him before he could recover, and we fought for the gun. Victor was stronger than I assumed, but I had rage on his side, rage at what he had done to Sarah, at what he had put us through, and at all the pain he had caused. The gun went off again during the struggle, and this time, Victor went still. I rolled off him, gasping for breath, and looked around frantically for Sarah. She was still tied to the chair, which had fallen on its side, but she was moving, barely. Sarah, are you okay? I shouted and rushed to untie her, my hands shaking as I saw how much blood she had lost. The stab wound was worse than I had thought, and her face was getting paler by the minute. I'm okay, she gasped, but even as she said it, her breathing was becoming more labored. Victor was unconscious, breathing but bleeding from a shoulder wound. The second gunshot had hit him instead of them. I quickly freed Sarah from the ropes and gathered her into my arms, pressing my hand against her side to try to stop the bleeding. David, she whispered, her voice getting weaker. I need to tell you something. Don't talk, I said frantically, pulling out my phone to call 911. Save your strength. Help is coming. But Sarah's breathing was becoming more ragged, and her eyes were starting to lose focus. Listen to me, she said, grabbing my shirt with what little strength she had left. If something happens to me... Nothing's going to happen to you, I said, tears streaming down my face as I held pressure on her wound. You are going to be fine. We are going to get married again, remember? We are going to have kids and grow old together. David, she whispered, and I had to lean down to hear her. I love you. The real me loves the real you. Everything. Everything else was just survival, but this. Us. This was the only real thing in my whole life. Her eyes fluttered closed. Sarah, stay with me, I screamed, shaking her gently. Don't you dare leave me now. I just found you and I won't lose you again. But she had gone limp in my arms, her breathing so shallow I could barely detect it. That was when I heard the sirens, voices, and footsteps running across the warehouse floor. Police! Drop your weapons! Help! I screamed. She's been stabbed and there is too much blood. The next few minutes were a blur of paramedics, police officers, and urgent medical procedures. I watched helplessly as they worked on Sarah, starting an IV, checking her vital signs, preparing to transport her to the hospital. Is she going to be okay? I asked one of the paramedics as they wheeled her into the ambulance. We got here just in time, the paramedic said. She has lost a lot of blood, but she's fighting. Are you family? I'm her husband, I said. Then you had better ride with us. She's going to need you when she wakes up. Chapter 18. The Hospital. I spent the next 8 hours in the hospital waiting room, pacing the floors and driving the staff crazy with questions. Sarah was in surgery to repair the damage from the stab wound. Victor's knife had punctured her lung and nicked an artery. The police had taken my statement about what happened in the warehouse. Victor Morales was in custody at a different hospital, under armed guard, facing charges for kidnapping, attempted murder, and assault with a deadly weapon. With his capture, the last member of Carlos's network was finally behind bars. But I couldn't think about any of that. All I could think about was Sarah lying unconscious on an operating table, fighting for her life. Agent Rodriguez arrived around midnight with coffee and updates on Victor's arrest. He's going away for a long time, she told me as they sat in the uncomfortable waiting room chairs. This nightmare is finally over for both of you. Only if she survives, I said quietly. She will, Agent Rodriguez said with surprising confidence. Mr. Chen, in all my years with the FBI, I have never seen anyone fight as hard to change their fate as Sarah has. She's not going to give up now, not when she finally has everything she has been fighting for. At 3:17 a.m., a tired-looking surgeon finally emerged from the operating room, and I jumped up so fast I nearly knocked over my coffee. She's going to be okay, the surgeon said, and I nearly collapsed with relief. It was touch and go for a while. She had lost a lot of blood, and the lung injury was more serious than we initially thought. But she's stable now. She's going to have a long recovery, but she should make a full one. Can I see her? I impatiently asked. She's in recovery now, still unconscious from the anesthesia. But you can sit with her if you would like. I followed the surgeon through a maze of hospital corridors to a small recovery room where Sarah lay connected to various machines and tubes. She looked so small and fragile in the hospital bed, but her breathing was steady, and her color was already better than it had been in the warehouse. I pulled a chair up beside her bed and took her hand. "I'm here," I whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." Sarah woke up 2 days later. I was dozing in the chair beside her bed when I heard her voice, weak but unmistakably hers. "David?" My eyes snapped open and I was immediately alert. "Hey, how are you feeling?" She looked around the hospital room, taking in the machines and the IV tubes. "Like I got stabbed," she said with a weak smile. "But alive. We're both alive." "Barely," I said, squeezing her hand. "Sarah, you scared the hell out of me. When you passed out in my arms, I thought I had lost you." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I tried to hold on, but I was so tired." "Don't apologize. You saved my life in that warehouse. You threw yourself at an armed man to protect me." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I could not let him hurt you, David. I could not live with myself if something happened to you because of my past. Well, it's over now. Victor's in custody, and according to the FBI, he was the last one. Your past can't hurt us anymore." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, staring at their joined hands. "David, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Okay," I said, fixing my gaze on her face. "Are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to be with someone who brings this kind of danger into your life?" I looked at her, taking in every of her emotions. She was pale and bandaged with stitches and bruises, but she was alive. She was here. She was mine. "Sarah, do you remember what you said to me in the warehouse right before you passed out?" She nodded. "You said that loving me was the only real thing in your whole life. Well, loving you is the only sure thing in mine. I don't care about the danger. I don't care about the past. I just care about you." Sarah started crying then, tears of relief and gratitude and overwhelming love. "I want to marry you again," she said through her tears. "I want to marry you as the person I really am, with no secrets, no lies, no hidden past. Just Sarah Martinez, who loves David Chen more than life itself." "I want that too," I said, leaning down to kiss her forehead gently. "But first, let's focus on getting you better. We have the rest of our lives to plan our wedding." Chapter 19. The Real Wedding. 8 months later, Sarah and I got married for the second time. This time, it was everything our first wedding should have been. My parents were there, along with Sarah's parole officer, who had become something of a friend, and several of Sarah's colleagues, where she now worked. Sarah wore a simple white dress, and I wore the same suit I had worn to our first wedding, because I wanted something from our past to be part of our new beginning. But the most important thing was our vows. Real vows this time, written from the heart with no deception between us. "David," Sarah said, her voice strong and clear, "3 years ago I married you under false pretenses. I was running from my past, hiding from who I really was, and I dragged you into a world of lies and danger that you never deserved. Today I'm marrying you as myself, flaws and all. I'm marrying you as a woman who has made terrible mistakes, but who is spending every day ever since then, trying to make amends. I'm marrying you as someone who has learned that love isn't about being perfect. It's about being brave enough to be vulnerable with another person. I promise you that I will never lie to you again. I promise that I will face whatever challenges come our way as your partner, not as someone you need to protect or save. And I promise that I will love you with the same fierce devotion you have shown me, even when I didn't deserve it. You saved my life in every way a person can be saved, and now I want to spend the rest of my life showing you how grateful I am for that gift." By the time she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the house, including mine. "Sarah," I said, with my voice shaking with emotion, "when I first met you, I thought I was getting a fairy tale romance. What I actually got was something much more valuable. I got a real love story. Real love isn't about perfection. It's about choice, about choosing each other every day, even when it's hard. It's about seeing each other at your absolute worst and deciding to stay anyway. You've shown me what it means to be brave, what it means to change, what it means to fight for the people you love. You've made me stronger, kinder, and more compassionate than I ever thought I could be. I promise to love you not despite your past, but including it, because your past made you the incredible woman you are today. I promise that no matter what happens, we will face it together. You are my heart, Sarah Martinez Chen. You are my home. Epilogue. As I'm telling you this story, Sarah and I have been married for the second time for almost 3 years. We live in a small house in Southeast Portland with our 10-month-old daughter, Elena, and 2 rescue dogs that Sarah brought home from the shelter. Sarah still works at the nonprofit, and I'm still teaching high school math. We're not rich. Between my teacher's salary and her nonprofit work, plus the restitution payments she's still making, we live pretty simply. But we're happy. Do you ever regret it? Sarah asked me recently as we were putting Elena to bed. Taking me back, going through all of this, dealing with my past? I thought about it seriously, like I always do when she asks. I regret that you went through so much pain before we met. I regret that other people got hurt because of choices you made when you were desperate and scared. But regret taking you back? Never. Even though our daughter will have to grow up knowing her mother was a criminal? Our daughter will grow up knowing her mother made mistakes, paid for them, and dedicated her life to making amends. She will grow up understanding that people can change, that love can transform us, that it's never too late to choose a different path. Sarah smiled and kissed me. I love you, David Chen. I love you too, Sarah Chen. The woman I fell in love with in that coffee shop all those years ago. The kind, funny, vulnerable woman who made me feel like I was worth something. She was real. She was just buried under years of trauma and terrible choices and fear, and it took almost losing her completely for us to find each other for real. Thank you for listening to My Wife is a Con Artist. This story reminds us that love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone worth fighting for. Someone who makes you want to be the best version of yourself. If this story moved you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel for more emotional audiobook stories, and let us know in the comments what story you would like to hear next. Remember, everyone deserves a second chance, and sometimes the most beautiful love stories come from the most broken places.